conference. Before we start, I'd like to ask our chairman to lead the prayer through the AVP.
Good morning, doctors. Let us start our today's activity with a prayer. Our Almighty Father in heaven, we come to you today with humility and in full reverence as we express our gratefulness to your divine power and spirit, who took care every one of us for us to attend this hospital grand rounds as our service to our constituents in our beloved institution. Lord, we humbly pray and seek your divine guidance and power so that we will successfully accomplish our goals for today. We pray that you will bless us with the gift of education, inspiration, wisdom, knowledge, and of understanding in order for us to be able to know your
Recording
holy
in
will
progress.
and carry them out in our daily life. At this very moment, we ask your providential guidance, care, and protection so that we may be able to imbibe the Holy Spirit to lead a meaningful and successful grand rounds today. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. So welcome everyone to the Department of OB Grand Rounds entitled Cervical Cancer in the Young Adult. Today is a little bit different because we have three presenters. First, I'd like to introduce our second-year resident, Ma'am Jonna Sanad Pulahon. She will be presenting a series of cases of cervical cancer in the young adult, followed by the presentation of our dear Chief of Clinics, Dr. Corazon Valdez, and our reproductive endocrinology specialist, Dr. Maria Dianalyn Sason Carlos. So to start, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Luella P. Aquino, an infectious disease specialist in Central Luzon, an active consultant of James L. Gordon Memorial Hospital. And to start, Mama Polahon, Dr. Polahon, please introduce the case.
Good morning,
And our
doctors.
objectives.
I am Dr. Jonelisa Sanad Pulahon, a second-year OB-GYN resident. These are the objectives of my presentation. To present demographic data of a case series of patients with cervical cancer among young adults less than 40 years old at James L. Gordon Memorial Hospital in comparison with the existing data among 40 to 60 years old. To discuss the challenges with screening and preventive aspects of cervical cancer. And lastly, to discuss the inclusion of fertility preservation options in the comprehensive care for young patients diagnosed with early stage cervical cancer. Cervical cancer ranks as the second most frequent cancer among women in the Philippines, next to breast cancer, and the fourth leading cause of cancer-related death among Filipino women. In 2023, 7,894 women are diagnosed with cervical cancer, and 10 women die of cervical cancer every day. Existing data shows that majority of cervical cancer cases are among 40 to 60 years old, with an average age of 52 years old. However, Our observation in the clinics is a trend towards increasing cervical cancer in the young adult. In our clinic, before the pandemic, we were seeing none to one case per year. However, after the pandemic, we began to note 2 to 3 cases per year. From the cases seen in the last 5 years, we were seeing rapid progression and worse prognosis that may run contrary to the study of Pelskovsky et al., stating that for women found to have cervical cancer, age of diagnosis in and of itself in women 35 years of age or younger is not associated with a worse prognosis. We wanted to find out the demographic data of these cases in the last 5 years and collected a preliminary data of 13 cases per presentation today. This may give us a different insight and a better understanding of cervical cancer in the young adult. Preliminary data gathered were 13 cases of cervical cancer in the young adult. One of the cases is an admission that triggered the presentation of this topic for grand rounds, while the other 12 cases came from our OPD clinic from 2021 to present. Showing you 13 cases of cervical cancer in young adults who are 40 years old and below. Table shows a tabulation of age of diagnosis, histopathology diagnosis, age of first coitus, number of sexual partners, gravidity and parity, treatment received, and current status. A collation of their demographic data will be presented next. Among the 13 cases presented, the majority of the cases below belong to the 26 to 30-year-old age bracket upon diagnosis. 83% of the 13 cases presented were cases of squamous cell carcinoma, while minority or 17% were adenocarcinoma and mixed type of cervical cancer. All of them had their sexual debut before 31-year-old. 46% had their first coitus before 21-year-old. 38% had their first sexual contact before 26-year-old, and only 2 or 15% had their sexual debut before 31-year-old. Majority of our cases, 53% were diagnosed with cervical cancer after 6 to 10 years from first sexual contact. 77% are multiparas, while 23% are nulliparas. 54% were diagnosed at an early stage, while 46% were diagnosed at an advanced stage. 85% of the cases has one sexual partner, and only minority or 15% of cases had multiple sexual partners. 31% underwent surgery followed by concurrent chemoradiation, and 23% underwent concurrent chemoradiation. Unfortunately, majority of the cases, or 46% of the cases, have unknown treatment status. Current status of the 13 cases presented revealed that 36% of cases were currently undergoing treatment, with same percentage to cases who were lost to follow-up. 7% has no evidence of disease for 1 year and 6 months. 14% died. 1 died after 9 months, and the other died after 1 year and 6 months from the time of diagnosis. In the existing data, the usual age of diagnosis is at 40 to 60-year-old, with an average age of 52 years old on diagnosis. However, in our 5-year review of 13 cases, majority of the cases were diagnosed at 26 to 30-year-old. is consistent with early coitar, less than or equal to 18 years old, of the existing data. Our case series showed shorter interval from first sexual exposure to diagnosis in comparison to existing data that showed it was 3 to 4 times longer compared to our case series. Surprisingly, 85% or majority of the cases had one sexual partner in comparison to the known risk factors of multiple sexual partners in the existing data. This might imply that their partners are the carriers of human papillomavirus. Majority of the cases presented are diagnosed at an early stage of cancer, while the existing data shows that majority were in advanced stage upon diagnosis. In both the case series, we noted them to be both multiparous. However, in the case series, it was only less than 3. While on existing data, it is usually more or equal to 5. One of the risk factors with 31% undergoing surgery. While on the existing data, most of them underwent concurrent chemoradiation. Only one has no evidence of disease for 1 year and 6 months. 2 of the cases expired due to progression of the disease. Sadly, both of these cases did not receive the prescribed and appropriate treatment. We cannot at this point compare the status of our case series with the existing data since we cannot assess the remaining 10 cases, one of whom transferred to another institution, 4 are still undergoing chemoradiation, and 5 were lost to follow-up. 2 out of our 13 cases underwent non-fertility sparing procedure, radical hysterectomy with bilateral lymph node dissection with oophoropexy for ovarian preservation. Existing data supports leaving the ovary for hormonal function among young adults since metastasis to the ovary from cervical cancer is extremely low, which is less than 1%. The following are our recommendations. A more thorough chart review to increase number of cases in the series, HPV DNA testing of cases seen, community-based VIA screening for more case pickup rate of pre-invasive disease, coordination with agencies like Philippine Society for Cervical Pathology and Colposcopy for educational materials and lay fora sessions, and lastly, coordination with drug companies and City Health Office for access to cheaper HPV vaccine and drive to involve even the young male population. That's all for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Palawan. The difference for this morning's grand rounds is that we have the 3 presenters, as I said a while ago. To follow Dr. Palawan's presentation is none other than our Chief of Clinics. She is an esteemed gynecologic oncologist who graduated from fellowship training from the University of the Philippines, Philippine General Hospital. She has pioneered the James L. Gordon training for residents in not just in Olongapo, but in different parts of the country. Please welcome for her lecture and reaction and inputs for the cervical cancer in the young adult. I'd like to welcome Dr. Corazon Valdez.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Jonah, for the presentation of the case series as a prelude to uh, the status of young adult cervical cancer in our institution. We know that cervical cancer is a preventable disease. However, the prevalence of cervical cancer in the last 5 decades has not significantly decreased. May I have the next slide, please? We know that we have pre-invasive diseases, no? That will take years before it progresses to invasive cancer. So that's a window wherein we can actually screen and identify these cervical cancer patients. Next, please. Next slide. So we are aware that 95% of cervical cancer are due to HPV infection. Majority of these infections are clearly transient and cleared by the immune system within a couple of years. However, we know that 10 to 20% will persist latently, and that will take years before it progresses to invasive cervical carcinoma. But the latency becomes the problem because these patients are asymptomatic. And in our culture, asymptomatic diseases normally will not get the attention of the patient or the case, and they will not be seeking consult in order to be screened. Next slide. These are the cervical cancer screening tools that we are using in the clinics, but we are now veering towards cancer screening in the community setting. Mainly because the clinical setting is way far too expensive and way far too inaccessible to the general population of women that we want to be able to screen. The most least inexpensive of our clinical tool is the conventional pap smear. The difficulty with just doing the conventional pap smear are the high false negative rates, as high as 40%. Liquid-based cytology and HPV DNA testing are clearly more definitive and more diagnostic and more specific, however, are more expensive. Liquid-based cytology is in the range of about 2,000 pesos, while HPV DNA testing is about 5,000 to 6,000 pesos. Colposcopy actually gives us the more definitive diagnosis of cervical cancer because we will be getting biopsy of the involved cervix. However, the cost of colposcopy is in the range of 8 to about 12,000 pesos, including the biopsy. So in the community setting, we're now using visual inspection with acetic acid and visual inspection with Lugos iodine. Acetic acid is the common household suka. No? That's 3 to 5% acetic acid. So it's clearly more accessible and it's the one that we're using to be able to screen a lot more women in the community setting. And we also are veering towards single visit approach, which means when we do our VIA using the acetic acid, we treat them at once, by using cautery or that's a cryotherapy and using thermal ablation. Next slide. So in the cervical cancer screening, we do follow the WHO and CDC recommendation using the HPV DNA testing as the primary screening test, if that's accessible. So we start at the age of 30 and do that every 5 to 10 years. The American Cancer Society actually suggests that we start at the age of 25. And from the data that we have from Dr. Apolahon's presentation, I'm veering towards using the age of 25 as the cutoff because we're finding them younger and younger, and we want to be able to detect the precancerous stage for better treatment outcome. And they will continue until they're more than 65 or until we get 2 consecutive negative primary HPV tests. PHEX, which is the Philippine Periodic Health Examination Recommendation, is a recommendation for low resource settings. So they will still be endorsing the use of conventional pap smear every 3 years, starting at the age of 21. For high-risk patients, however, we would like to be able to screen 3 years from the time of initial coitus. And from the data of Dr. Apolahon, that might mean that since we have a 15-year-old, and from the data of the young adult fertility and sexuality being a survey being conducted by the UP Population Institute, which we call the YAPS series, the YAPS 5 series done 2021 to 22, actually found that there are about 18% of our youth engaged in having their first sexual contact before the age of 18. So if the youngest now is at the age of 15, we should really be starting our screening at the age of 18. That's 3 years from the time of initial sexual contact. Next slide, please. And there's the issue of prevention. Prevention has three steps or 3 levels, but the easiest preventive portion is actually the primary prevention, but it doesn't mean it's not it's difficult to do. So if we go towards the right, the secondary prevention and the tertiary prevention, the cost is greater as we go towards the tertiary prevention. And the outcome in terms of treatment is really not that good in terms of prognosis and in terms of outcomes. But if we look at the primary prevention, it is supposedly easier than the secondary and tertiary prevention, but might seem impossible for most, like total sexual abstinence, or might be difficult to have lifetime mutual monogamy, or even the use of a barrier method like condom prior to contact as a means of preventing sexually transmitted illnesses. From the data from the YAPS 5, only 4 out of 10 youth will actually be using condom for prevention of STI. And there is the issue of the HPV vaccination. Next. Next slide. The recommendation for HPV vaccination by the WHO and our own Pittsfield targets the 9 to 14-year-old girls and the 9 to 18 years old boys or males, teenager. The dosing schedule is almost similar. We give 2 doses if they're less than 15, and we give them 3 doses if they're more than or equal to 15 years of age. For the male population, we basically give the HPV vaccination, quadrivalent and the nonavalent is recommended for prevention of anogenital warts and anal cancer. And as we saw from Dr. Polahon's series, we are seeing a lot of male HPV carriers, the ones we call Cancer Charlie, and that I agree with her recommendation that we should actually be pushing for the younger male vaccination, because the trend is that more males are carrying the HPV vaccine and more of their contacts with the females are getting infected. Next. Next slide. Yes. In terms of the HPV vaccination, we are now endorsing the nonavalent vaccine because we found that the HPV type 52 is more common among Filipinos and among the Asia Pacific region. So nowadays, we are even pushing for a nonavalent vaccine for patients that has had their bivalent or quadrivalent vaccine. The problem with HPV vaccination, however, is the cost. If we look at the cost of the bivalent vaccine, that's in the vicinity of 2,000 pesos. For the quadrivalent vaccine, that's in the vicinity of 4,000 pesos. The nonavalent will be in the vicinity of 5,000 to 6,000 pesos. And for the average income earner, that might be something that's not achievable. Even the strategy of our DOH that gives bivalent vaccine in the public system or public schools nowadays might not be that we will have to assess if that's a useful strategy. But since in the YAPS 5 survey, 35% of our youth is out of school youth. We may not be reaching the group that we want to reach the highest. So we now look into the Philippine National Strategy about cervical cancer. Next slide, please. Next, that aims to reduce and reach, and use vaccination. We want to be able to vaccinate 90% of our Filipino females at the age of 15. 70% should be screened at 35 and 45. 90% the disease should have been treated. This is the 2030 target. That's just 4 years from now. However, we think that we are getting very disappointing results. Please, next slide. So as of this time, only 4 to 20% had received their first dose of our HPV vaccine. 1 to 5% have completed the recommended dose. Of the 70% target for screening, only 1% of the 54 million eligible women have been screened in the last 5 years. And we continue to have 7,200, 8,500 new cases annually of cervical cancer and over 4,000 deaths annually. And that's the same data we have some 3 decades ago. So the burden of cervical cancer is still here. There are a lot of problems when it comes to screening and when it comes to prevention. We hope that by screening them in the community setting, we shall be getting more and more women to be screened in the pre-invasive disease, and we are able to identify
Recording
to give them
stopped.
the adequate treatment. However, we are pushing for, we agree with the recommendation of Dr. Apolahon, to
Recording in
push for
progress.
vaccination of our young male adults, and that hopefully our city health office can give more vaccines for free, for our public school students as well as those out of school students. And thank you. That's it for my sharing this morning. Lala?
Thank you so much. From our esteemed gynec-oncologist, Dr. Corazon Valdez, and our chief of clinics, I know all of you have a lot of questions about the case, about the series, and about the screening and prevention. Please hold on to those questions because we also have another speaker, an esteemed obstetrician in Central Luzon. Ayan. Dr. Marcela Diana Lynn Carlos is the regional director of the Philippine Society for Reproductive Medicine. She is also the regional director for gynecologic endoscopy. Na ano ata ako, Ma'am Diana Lynn, na starstruck. Actually, she is the head of the Philippine Pediatric Society for Gynecologic Adolescent Medicine. Currently, the vice president of the AccuArt or Accu Infertility in Central Luzon in Pampanga. She is a graduate of the University of the Philippines, Philippine General Hospital fellowship training on reproductive endocrinology and infertility, an active consultant of the POG Central Luzon, and also an esteemed lecturer, ang aming lifeline sa James L. Gordon with regards to reproductive endocrinology and infertility. It's my honor to present to you Ma'am Marcela Diana Lynn Sason Carlos. Take it away po, ma'am.
Thank you, Ma'am Lala, for that kind introduction, and Dr. Cora Valdez for the invitation to talk to you this morning. Let me just share my slides. Can you see my slides?
Yes, ma'am.
Pero hindi siya nakaano hindi ako marunong. Paano siya slideshow?
Set up slideshow.
Let slideshow. Wala. Ano ba? Play from start.
Play from start pa, ma'am.
Okay.
Yaw.
Can you see it? Okay.
Okay na, ma'am.
Sorry. Ulit, ano ba? Okay, so for this morning, I'll be talking about fertility preservation in the context of cervical cancer in the young. So we have the important role as gynecologists in initiating timely fertility discussions and facilitating referrals to reproductive specialists for young patients with cervical cancer. Because there's now the improvement of survival rates for those with cancers. More patients anticipate a full life after treatment, and therefore, because of that, there's now room to plan for future parenthood. Because approximately 10% of all cancers occur during the reproductive age group, and treatments like your chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and surgery can significantly impair fertility. And young women facing this diagnosis report that potential loss of fertility is among the most distressing and sad consequence of the treatment. Actually, aside from your cancer, there are other gynecologic conditions wherein there's need for proactive fertility counseling and preservation, such as your severe endometriosis, even benign ovarian tumors, and for prophylactic oophorectomy for your BRCA mutation carriers. Now, why? Wait. Let's see. These are the key selection criteria for conservative surgery. Okay, so there's the desire to preserve fertility from the patients. The tumor size, it's still small, less than 2 centimeters. And there is negative for lymph nodes, and there is no high risk histology. Like right now, I hope Ma'am Cor will correct me if I'm wrong. The recommendation is merely for squamous cell carcinoma as far as your cervical cancer is concerned. I asked two of my gyne-onco colleagues, and they said that it's only for cervical squamous cervical cancer that we advocate fertility preservation. So just to tell you the stages and the techniques for conservative management for cervical cancer. So we have the stage 1, A1, which is your microinvasive. So usually we manage this by your cervical conization or your CKC, your cold knife conization, or LIP, which is the treatment of choice for this stage. And the criteria is that there should be absence of your lymph node invasion, and this is highly effective for this stage. And stage 1A2 and early stage 1B1, wherein your tumor is still less than 2 centimeters, we can do your radical trachelectomy by removing the cervix, upper vagina, and surrounding tissue, but leaving the uterus. And this is the standard fertility sparing procedure for this stage, lesion of less than or equal to 2 centimeters. So conservative management is no longer recommended when the cancer has spread beyond the cervix, for larger tumor sizes, or when the patient does not desire to retain her fertility anymore. So here are the guidelines for our management for our institutions from the American Society of Clinical Oncology, or ASCO. They say that physicians should address the possibility of infertility and refer patients to reproductive medicine specialists once they diagnose the malignancy. And for ASRM, the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, in their 2022 committee opinion, they emphasized individualized care, interdisciplinary collaboration, and ethical obligation to present all these fertility options to the patients and include them in the management of your cervical cancer. So let's now go to the my topic for this morning, which is gynecologic fertility preservation options. So we can do a lot of things to our options. We can offer a lot of options to our patients. The first is your embryo cryopreservation. So it is the process of freezing and storing viable embryos, which are your fertilized eggs from your IVF, in vitro fertilization, or ICSI, which is usually what we do now, intracytoplasmic sperm injection cycles in liquid nitrogen, and we freeze this for further use. Okay, so this is how we do it. We collect sperms from the male if the patient has a partner, and then we do our ovulation induction with our gonadotropins. Usually we do daily injections, and then we do ultrasound monitoring until you see such a time until you have a good enough mature size follicle, after which you inject your either ACG or your GnRH agonist to make the follicle mature, and then we go to the center and aspirate or pick up this mature eggs, okay? And then the embryologist will now select these mature eggs and inject the sperm, okay, into that egg. That's our ICSI, cytoplasmic sperm injection. And then these are observed until hopefully a lot of them or most of them would fertilize. And after fertilization, these embryos are now frozen, okay, in liquid nitrogen, which is the picture on the right. So another fertility preservation technique, if the patient has no partner yet, no husband or partner, is egg freezing or your oocyte cryopreservation. This is the process in which the woman's eggs are extracted, frozen, and stored as a method to preserve reproductive potential for future use. So it's the same procedure until the extraction of the oocyte or the egg. Okay, so we give your medicine, your injectables, and then we do monitoring by ultrasound. We harvest with our ovum pickup. This is ultrasound guided. The patient is sedated, and then we collect the eggs. Hopefully, we'll be able to extract or harvest mature eggs, and the eggs are frozen. Okay. Another is your ovarian tissue cryopreservation. This now involves the laparoscopic removal and freezing of the ovarian cortex containing the immature follicles. Okay, usually used for girls or women, again, undergoing chemo or prior to chemo or radiotherapy, who cannot delay treatment. You don't have enough time to do your oocyte stimulation. Okay, for these cases, the frozen tissue is later auto-transplanted and restored to fertility and endocrine function into the patient. So again, this is an option. This is the only option for your prepubertal girls wherein you cannot stimulate, and they can be reimplanted post-treatment to restore your ovarian function. So another is your ovarian transposition. Okay, this method is to remove or transfer the ovaries into a more safe place. Kumbaga, is to protect the ovaries during treatment, and this is repositioning of your ovaries away from your radiation field. So this picture, the picture on your left is where the ovaries are located in their natural site or their home base. And the laparoscopic videos on the right are pictures wherein they're transporting the ovary into the abdominal wall. And the picture in the center where you have this circles on both sides is where the ovaries were deposited, okay, away from the field of radiation. So for the fertility sparing treatment in your cervical cancer, the procedure is radical trachelectomy in your selected stage 1A2 to 1B1 cases. Okay, so you do not remove the uterus. Okay, you just remove the cervix. And this is the picture wherein we compare the different surgeries we do. So for the one in the center, that's our total hysterectomy. Can you see the broken lines? That's what we remove. And then the next is your, just a comparison. Supracervical hysterectomy, wherein you retain a portion of the cervix. And then radical hysterectomy, you also remove your parametria. And then hysterectomy with your bilateral oophorectomy, wherein you remove all the pelvic organs. And then oophorectomy, you just remove the ovary. And the star of the show for this morning, trachelectomy, wherein you just remove the cervix, but you leave the body of the uterus intact and with the patient. So this is the broken line, the black broken line is again what we remove only. So the uterus will remain with the patient. So again, this is a picture wherein you have the baby, and after which we do the this is a picture of cerclage. Okay, this is the usual cerclage wherein we do our cerclage during pregnancy already. Okay, but in the trachelectomy, you try to do parang cerclage na rin during the trachelectomy so that for future pregnancy. Okay, so the cerclage is a surgical procedure that stitches a weak cervix close to prevent premature birth or miscarriage. Cerclage we also do for our cervical incompetence, not just for your CA patients. Okay, so this is just a figure to depict that. So if the cervix has been removed by surgery, the stitch is placed on the lower end of the uterus. Unlike in your usual cerclage, you put it sa cervix. Okay? So since ito, wala na siyang cervix, so mas mataas. Okay? Kasi doon mo lang malalagay yung stitches mo. Okay? So in conclusion, fertility preservation is a crucial aspect of modern gynecologic and oncologic care. As survival rates improve, it ensures an opportunity for future parenthood and becomes a fundamental component of your holistic management care for the patient. Thus, we should offer fertility preservation procedures for our patients, especially early stage cervical, confined to your squamous cell carcinoma, and refer them, co-manage them with your reproductive medicine specialists. Thank you very much. That's all for my talk. Any?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Ma'am D, as we call her. Thank you, Dr. Carlos. We are now ready to entertain questions from the floor. While waiting, I'm sure some of our audience, part of our audience are inquiring about what is the current program of the City Health or the government with regards to screening or prevention. If I may ask, first from our City Health Department, I know Ma'am Ana Figueres is here. Nandiyan ka pa po ba, ma'am?
Yes,
Yes po. Thank you, Ma'am Ana. Ma'am Ana Figueres is the Expanded Program on Immunization Coordinator in charge of Olongapo City. You know for a fact that primary prevention, secondary prevention is crucial for addressing cervical cancer. So before we bring back the floor to our gynecologic oncologist, may we hear from our City Health, Ma'am Ana? Please indulge. Thank you.
yes, good morning po. For our program sa City Health, so we have the Bakuna Eskwela, as mentioned kanina, so for female students from grade 4, age 9 to 14, they are given the HPV, Gardasil din po. So for our accomplishment for last year, medyo disappointing din po ang ating accomplishment because we only have 25.65% for the first dose. And for the second dose, we have the 6.12%. Ganun lang po kababa. Kahit kahit gano'n na kami mag-encourage, magpilit sa mga magulang, medyo hindi pa rin po nila ina-accept. Pero ang plan namin, there was na magbigay din sa mga private schools. Mas tinatanggap po ng private schools kesa sa mga public schools ang vaccine natin. So nakadagdag po yung pagbigay natin sa mga private, kaya tumaas ang ating accomplishment. So yun po. And another is, yun nga, meron po kaming VIA monthly sa centers, sa lahat ng centers po. That's all, Dr.
Thank you, Ma'am Ana. I think later we'll still have other questions. We have a question from the floor. I think Dr. Rojo is raising his hand. Good morning, Dr. Jim Rojo, our medical oncologist. Good morning, sir.
Hi. So we have another mini symposium, ano? But
Yes, sir.
I will address yung comments to the resident. It seems that you do not fully understand, how good your topic is. So just looking at when I read yung objective slide, parang ayoko nang makinig. Hindi siya impressive, no? Kasi sabi mo you're just gonna look at epidemiologic data. Parang nandiyan ka na, hindi mo pa tinignan deeper than that. When you make case series or even case reports, no, it should be something that's really important, worth publishing, worth listening to. So this is a very important topic, cancer in the young and then cervical cancer siya. When you present this, do not say it's merely demographic data. In fact, you were looking beyond demographic data, hindi mo lang alam. Yung the right terms would be tumor biology kasi tiningnan mo yung tiningnan mo yung histopath niya, no? Iba-iba yung biologies nila. Tiningnan mo yung clinical course nila, diba? So those are not demographic, diba? So in your introduction, you have to say, no, we looked at demographic data, tumor biology, clinical course, treatment results. So it's more comprehensive. Now, doing that and seeing what you were doing and what you are currently doing, this is not really a case series, no? This is a mixed cohort study, no? It's retrospectively, kinuha mo yung ibang case mo. Yung isa, that's prospective, kakukuha mo lang yan, no? And then fina-follow mo siya. Some of the courses, the patients that you got retrospectively, finalo mo. So this is indeed a cohort study. This is a higher level of study, not just case series. So that's lang yon for residents to understand why you do this and how you do this. Tapos again, cliche na naman, no, ang ganda ng material mo and you made cliche conclusions, overclaiming. Parang how did you connect VIA to your case series? Diba? That's a huge leap. Ang ganda na nga ng topic, we can write an entire book on cervical cancer in the young. When you make conclusions, that yung conclusions na yon are dun sa study mo. Or if you make recommendations, dapat medyo connected naman siya. So you made a mini symposium here. In fact, tagtuloy ka into, dapat yung lecture ni Dr. Valdez, dapat mostly ikaw nga nag-present nun as part of the introduction, and then yung nuances na lang nun yung kay Doktora. And then we went on. If you were developing this ideally kasi when you make this presentations in NPR, ikaw ang nag-develop ng entire presentation. If you made a mini symposium, wow, very good, no? That's really good. Then you connected it to fertility preservation. Medyo halos hindi na siya directly connected to it. Okay, fine, no? That's still good. But you didn't really look into that. You mentioned you looked into how many got surgeries, meron bang pinlano for fertility preservation, or maybe fertility preservation expert kasi yung naisip mo na resource speaker, no? But then mabuti na lang tinawag nila. The implications here really are a lot, no? And the bigger one is public health. Diba? Yung sinasabi ni Cora, VIA. I was in PGH also during that time when VIA was being developed and implemented. We went to the barrios to do that VIA. It was a stopgap thing. Can you believe it? A quarter of a century later, we're still trying to implement that thing. Stopgap, no? And they're the same problems, walang pera, etc., etc. How can we make a dent? In fact, lumalala pa nga yung problem, diba? Because of that. So when you write your case series, no, this is really very good. Kung hindi na siya case series, don't call it case series anymore. You can follow it up, you can expand it. Sabi mo nga, you plan to expand it. So you look at the heavier issues here. No? You focus on the public health impact of this. Kasi hindi lang cervical cancer ang on the rise, no? When it comes to cancer in adolescents and young adults. Yun lang. Thanks.
Noted, Dr. Rojo. Any reaction from our resident, Jonah? Dr. Pulahon? Just a little
More.
reaction on the things noted from our
Good morning,
training
Doc.
officer, Dr. Rojo. Yes.
Point
May we have
po,
your
all
vid-
points well
Video?
taken po.
All right.
Thank you
As
po.
yes, dear. You can further use your materials. Most of them are from private cases, but you can ask permission to develop this for your interesting case and also for your research. So I hope you take that down. And Dr. Rojo mentioned about screening, prevention, and the visual inspection by acetic acid, which is a key program of the Department of Health together with the POGS. I believe Dr. Ninel Salazar is here. Ma'am, would you like to give an input? Also from the City Health Program. If there are anything before I go to the question of Dr. Daisy. Okay, while waiting for Dr. Salazar, may I read a question from
hello?
Dr. Daisy Rivera? Yes, ma'am?
Hello, Doktora?
Good morning,
Oo.
ma'am. Yes
Si
po.
Dr. Figueres po ulit. Sa
Good
VIA
morning,
po,
Dr. Figueres
oo.
again.
Yeah, for our VIA testing, we had 499 for 2024 and 1,026 for 2025. Ano daw po, non-reactive lahat sa test nila. That's all. Thank you po.
Yes, ma'am. Back in September of last year, we together with Dr. Cora Valdez, we started out a gynecologic cancer screening in James L. Gordon, and surgery of positive cases. Why I believe the crucial arm for the effective screening was to screen the midwives and the BHWs themselves, so that we teach them how the VIA works and how the VIA is very, very important for those in the barrios and those in the GIDA areas, in the areas where there are no easily accessible healthcare. I'd like to read the question of Dr. Rivera. How do you manage patients with inadequate surgery, simple hysterectomy, and what is the prognosis compared to those patients with complete radical surgery? I think I'd like to call on Ma'am, Dr. Valdez for this question, Ma'am. Ma'am, in the chat box po from Dr. Rivera.
Yes. We have actually in the case series, we had two patients managed by simple hysterectomy. Both of them died 6 and 9 months after the initiation of treatment and diagnosis. Simple hysterectomy, the first case actually was a hysterectomy done for myoma. So it was not, the patient was not preoperatively diagnosed to have cervical cancer. So it turned out to be very under treatment. The other case actually was simple hysterectomy done for a stage 1B3 by a general surgeon. That patient I saw myself, so I told her no, that we don't do any surgery, even radical ones for 1B3. We do either neoadjuvant or concurrent prior to surgery, or go directly immediately to concurrent chemoradiation. Simple hysterectomy by itself, is not the prescribed surgery of choice. Even for fertility sparing, we will do extra partial hysterectomy. That's the least we do in terms of doing them for early stage disease. For fertility sparing, kanina, yung mention ni Dr. Dina, that's radical trachelectomy. And that's limited to just 1A1, 1A2, and 1B1. So, ibig sabihin, the tumor is less than 2 centimeters. And we do have strict guidelines. Histology should be squamous cell carcinoma. So, Dina, yun lang talaga. Not for histologic types that are really more aggressive than the usual ones. So, we don't. As much as possible, we'd like to screen patients, prior to surgery. So we actually put them in the category there that the prescribed surgery should be the ones that they should be receiving. Lala?
Noted on that, ma'am. Okay. Dr. Jonah, can you show again, for the purposes of our students, our residents who are listening, the etiologic agent for cervical cancer, the virus that causes a cervical cancer? So, can you flash your PowerPoint presentation again? And while you're doing that, I'd like to read on a question by our esteemed surgeon, Dr. Gigi Garcia. He is surprised why the PhilHealth Yakap outpatient cancer screening did not include cervical pap smear, or is it this part of case risk? Sir, the latest Yakap also already has the pap smear. The latest presentation that I got from PhilHealth Olongapo just last week, they already included pap smear, fecalysis with occult blood, and mammogram. Okay. All right. Any more questions from the floor or clarifications? Okay. The nurses are here.
Lala,
Yes, Sir Gigi.
yeah, I mean, if it's already included in the YACAP, it's more of, I think what we should do is have an intensive information campaign. Because, it was mentioned a while ago that one of the causes why you have a very poor, is because of the cost, for pap smear. If it's free naman, then there should be no reason why we can encourage our constituents, especially those in the targeted age group, to undergo pap smear if PhilHealth will cover it.
Yes, sir. That's a breakthrough in the outpatient program, sir, having a pap smear screening included. The dilemma, sir, before was that the midwives, the obstetricians are able to get the sample. However, of course, we have costs with the pathologist and the laboratory cost. Is Dr. Manasan in the floor? May we ask for any input? So the easiest and the most accessible, sir, is to do the visual inspection with acetic acid as an initial screening tool. If there is no available pap smear processing in the area. So say for example in the barrios or in the mountains and in the initial barangay level, they can do, sir, the VIA. I think what we need to do is to train the trainers, I think this is one of the output from this symposium is to be able to learn one, do one, and teach one. So if we can mobilize not just the obstetricians, but also the generalist, we can do that also, sir. To help the PhilHealth YACAP, sir, I think. So we are flashing now the etiologic agent for cervical cancer, human papillomavirus or HPV. So Jonah, would you like to uh, read a little bit more? So you know the low risk and the high risk. So of course, that's why the HPV vaccination for the 9 to 12 years old is very, very important as a primary prevention, okay, in the adolescence or early childhood, early adulthood. So before the children will have their first sexual contact, they must have their initial 2 doses, the 2 doses that they should have for the human papillomavirus vaccination.
Good morning, doctors, again. The common etiology for cervical cancer is the human papillomavirus, wherein virtually all cases of cervical cancer are caused by persistent infection with high-risk type of the HPV. HPV is commonly transmitted sexually, and approximately 80% of women will be infected with HPV at some point in their lifetime. The initial infection usually occurs during adolescence or early adulthood. Majority of women will clear the infection within 18 to 24 months. However, in 3 to 5% of women, HPV infection will persist and they will develop significant pre-invasive disease, while less than 1% of women infected will develop invasive cancer. Therefore, HPV infection is necessary but not sufficient for cervical cancer development. High-risk HPV strains are responsible for most HPV-related cancers, including cancer of the oropharynx and anus, penis, vulva, and vagina. Primary strains are HPV 16 and 18. Low risk types such as HPV 6 and 11 typically cause genital warts but rarely cancer. Most infections clear on their own, but persistent high-risk infections can lead to precancerous changes and eventually cancer, highlighting the importance of screening. That's all po, Doc, for the HPV.
Okay. So again, for the purposes of, because students are also here and the residents, so to whom how does the referral process in our women's health clinic, if a patient shows signs and symptoms and they go to the outpatient clinic, what do you do? How do you screen? How do you screen the current screening process in James L. Gordon?
Doc, in our current setup, if we have a patient who came in at our women's clinic for cervical cancer screening, what we usually do is we perform the pap smear. If we perform the pap smear, Doc, and we ask the patient to follow up once the results are out. However, if visible lesion is already present on the cervix, what we do now is we proceed already, Doc, with the biopsy of the lesion itself.
Yes, it's very important. No, so to our residents, if you already see a lesion, proceed already to the biopsy. Okay, and what other diagnostics tests, the latest guidelines, if you can give a little more input, of course, for the knowledge of everyone. Aside from the pap smear, the latest input is that we already use the HPV DNA to assess if the HPV in the patient is already low risk or high risk. No? So HPV DNA, where is it available, Dr. Pulahon?
HPV DNA, locally, Doc, it is available at High Precision, Doc. However, in our OPD or in our clinic at James, it's not available.
But the residents you can send to our DOH hospitals, no, for Bataan General and for Jose Bilingan for all your samples for the HPV DNA.
Yes,
I think
po.
we have covered adequately on more of the topics. Okay. Any more input, Ma'am Dr. Valdez? If there are any other last minute or last words to end our mini symposium, there are no more questions in the chat box. I think they have been satisfied with the presentation of our four esteemed panelists. May we call on also from our CME if there are any announcements, and from our department chair, of course, Dr. Joy Bongkoting, and our training officer, Dr. Florence Espinosa. There are any other inputs with regards to this very timely and very important cervical cancer in the young adolescent? Kung wala na pong tanong from our consultants. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Leah Doble, for raising our occasion this morning. Thank you for being with us. So please note, Dr. Pulahon, the inputs of Dr. Rojo, and please process this paper for your interesting and also for your research. No? So we hope to be able to, with the material that you have, we'll be able to come up with a research material probably for publication for Central Luzon, okay, and also a data for the Philippines. Okay. All right. Now, I'd like to call on our Chief of Clinics for any more or other announcements. Dr. Cora.
Yes, thank you so much, Lala. And thank you, Dr. Apolahon. I think for the very short period of time that you were able to prepare for this grand rounds, you were able to get substantial data to make this an informative and a very interesting grand rounds. So thank you, Dr. Lala, for moderating. It was
Thank you po,
well
doctors, for
coordinated.
guiding me.
And we would like to thank Dr. Adina Sazon for always being very easy, madaling hablutin in terms of trying to share his knowledge with the Department of OBGYN and to James Gordon Hospital as a whole. And we'd like to announce the next grand rounds will be February 19. And the department in charge is the internal medicine. The topic is SLE, presenting as acute diarrhea. Today also is a graduation of our surgery fourth year resident, or fifth year na ba si Dr. Segi. So at 10 a.m. The surgery department will be hosting and holding a graduation ceremony for her. We'd like to announce, yung sinasabi kanina ni Dr. Rojo, I think there really is a need for us, James Gordon Hospital, to organize a research workshop. So we can actually start harnessing yung mga resource people that we can actually, and we can start with the researches of our residents and guiding them as they go along early on in the year. So that's in the pipeline, including a workshop probably for consultants, in terms of test construction. That's also in the pipeline. So we'd like to ask your participation in the said activities being organized by the hospital. And then we'd like to remind all the departments to have your new consultants credentialed. We don't like issues arising that your new consultants have not been credentialed and there are already admitting cases in the hospital. So please have them credentialed before they actually do get admitting privileges. We don't like any issues when it comes to admissions and admitting privileges. Those of your new consultants, that who would like to actually have admitting privileges, who have not been credentialed, can actually admit, but they need to be paired with another consultant of the department, preferably in the active status. So that's about it, Dr. Lala. I turn it over to you for other announcements from the other section, OCMS and MSO perhaps, and to formally end the session this morning. Thank you.
Thank you also to Ma'am Ana, Dr. Figueres, for giving us the data for the City Health. Salamat po.
Yes, Ana, thank you so
And-
much.
From the CME committee and from the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, would like to thank you, everyone who attended for this grand rounds. And if there are no more questions from MSO.
MSO would like to
Yes, ma'am.
remind everyone that the February 26th we will have our General Assembly. It will be at the Yacht Club. Breakfast will be served at 8 o'clock. And then also to remind all the departments to submit their nominees who are willing and able to serve for the MSO for another year, so that we can choose from these people who our next board will be. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Balmaceda. Ma'am, from the OB department, please turn on your videos for the documentation, Ma'am Joanne, and to everybody who attended this morning's conference. Maraming salamat po, and hopefully that each clinic, each department, and all the students have learned a lot and help us in averting and addressing cervical cancer, not just in the young, but in the population. So all for women's health and all for being able to actively address this disease, cancer, and disease of the women in general. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, doctors.
Johnny, ikaw na lang mag-screen. Dr. Carla, salamat po ulit.
Thank you rin po.